My next guest is an attorney at Garagos and Garagos, as well as a sports law professor at NYU, NY Law,
New York Law School.
New York Law School, New York Law School. We got Dan Lest, Esquire, Professor. Dan, is everything going for you?
It's good. I just have so many titles now. I just don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, it's like what do you call it from Game of Thrones? With the dragons. Daenerys Targaryen. You get more of a legal background.
I'm the mother of dragons of sports law. I will take that. I will take that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have some more kind of updates on the whole Deshaun Watson situation. I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Really hasn't really been much from either side, either from the Harden side or from Tony Busby, but there has been some rumors of settlements, but on that Watson's camp has said we haven't said anything. What have been your take on kind of these developments?
Yeah, so on the one hand, there has been no developments, and then we had a fun day last week where all of a sudden both sides kind of perked up, and they said, well, on the one hand, Busby said, Harden side approached us for settlement, and then Harden said, well, that's not true. You guys approached us for settlement. So we basically went almost a month with no updates, substantive updates in the case, and then instead of really an update, we have Tony Busby and Rusty Harden both coming forward, alleging that the other one approached and tried to initiate settlement talks, but either way that they broke down. The substantive update, if you want to call it that, was from Tony Busby, who acknowledged that his clients, I think he said 8 clients have already met with the police department, and 4 of his clients have met with the NFL as part of their, there's these dual investigations. So there is a substantive update. It's that these investigations are going forward, that the police and the NFL are both interested in exploring these claims.
Are you surprised he's still not on the exempt list?
Yes and no. I think they have enough right now to put him on the exempt list. I don't think they're in any hurry because, training camp is just getting started up. We're not really that close to any of the preseason games, or obviously week 1. So they're not in any real rush to do it. I think if they wanted to send a message, they could have. But I think what probably is holding them back, if the police and the DA's office over in Harris County come forward with criminal charges, the NFL really doesn't have an option. They have to put him on some type of exempt list or maybe even, if the timing is right, issue a formal suspension at that point in time. And if the police have announced that they're coming forward with criminal charges and the DA's office is signing on to that, I mean, who could really fault the NFL? So if that occurs, the NFL has a pretty easy decision on their hands. So I think the NFL, probably from a PR perspective, from a grievance perspective, is trying to wait as long as they can for the police department / DA's office to bail them out with criminal charges. And Zach, if that doesn't happen, then it's going to be a really hard decision for the NFL.
Because I'm not sure if the last time we spoke, it was before or after the first victim came forward. I'm not 100% certain the time my time was going to mixed up. But after that, I know there was a lot of backlash, but still really no criminal charges. As long as this has been taking, is that a surprise to you, or do you think they're still doing what do you call it, accumulating evidence?
So I think, when we got these first allegations, I think right at the beginning of April, maybe there was some sniff of this, maybe the first week of April, end of March. What people kind of need to keep remembering, the police haven't had this case from day one. They got this case, we'll say, a couple of weeks in, and that's when Tony Busby, his client, decided to cooperate with police for the first time and speak to them. So for whatever reason, maybe it was strategic, I'm not sure. Busby wasn't having his client speak to any police departments, hadn't filed police reports or anything like that. So the police haven't had this the entire time. Police aren't going to rush this by any means. I think with a high-profile case, they're going to be working harder, and this case is going to get a priority in terms of an investigation. Not that shocking that we haven't had criminal charges yet, but on the overall landscape, right, you have 20 different women who allegedly don't know each other at all, and there's no connection between them, and they all have relatively similar stories. Taking that at face value, you put that in a vacuum, those are the type of cases that the police department usually picks up. We'll see if there's they stray from the trends here, but again, assuming all those people don't know each other, they have similar allegations without knowing each other, it's usually a sign in favor of the police department, DA's office taking this case.
Are you surprised that no more cases have really come forward since that inundation a couple of weeks ago?
Yes, actually, I am very surprised at that. I can't really make sense, but we went from 1 to 2 to 6 to 12 to 20 And then they stopped, which doesn't necessarily add up. Maybe it just means that people want to see how this shakes out. I think the one thing that changed that maybe cut off this, we'll say, windfall, these 20 plus alleged victims had to come forward with their names. They couldn't hide behind a complaint that said they were anonymous. So first 20 came out and they said, hey, we're anonymous. We're filing these charges, but we don't have to give our name. That might have quelled and might have scared some people not to bring cases that they otherwise would have been. But by no means is this the end. There's still people that could come forward. But I just with the way the trends were moving up, and obviously Watson's side said that he had another 20 some odd masseuses that were willing to speak in his favor. So you're in a vicinity of 40 plus masseuses. I was a little surprised that no additional individuals came forward. Not say again that it's not going to happen, but surprised it hasn't happened yet.
I haven't taken a look at all the individual cases, but they're all in a pretty a couple of year time frame. If I'm wrong, are you surprised that no one's come forward from years ago that maybe this would happen in high school? Is that a surprise to you?
I don't know. I mean, I think all we know, and you're right. It's about a year. It's from March of 2020 to March of 2021. Yeah. Well, it's also right around when the pandemic started, around when his schedule got kind of thrown into flux. I remember reading a report, again, you take everything with a grain of salt, but that the pandemic kind of threw his schedule into flux. So he had a normal crew of people he normally used, or maybe it was Texans people, maybe it was his own private masseuses that he used. I believe some of the masseuses that came out that are willing to speak in favor of him, in support of him, were also masseuses that occurred, prior to that worked with him prior to the pandemic. So, truthfully, nothing surprises me at this point. In the case with respect to these allegations, they mushroomed up to 20, and we kind of stuck there. I would find it take it with a grain of salt. But all these allegations occur in a 1 year period. If this rampant and these allegations occurred in almost essentially more than once a month, would it be odd that they had never occurred at any point in time before March of 2020? Maybe atypical. I don't know if I'd be surprised again by anything, but it would seem to be strange that it was this really neat window of March of 2020 to March of 2021. Possible, of course, but seemingly a little atypical of cases like this.
In terms of hypothetical suspensions, what type of cases have been brought to the commissioner's office in the past that are kind of maybe not 100% similar to this, but relatively in that same ballpark? What kind of suspensions have they handed out for that?
I mean, there's no cases that really model this in any way, shape, or form. This is a case that's not necessarily as much. I mean, you can make the case, right? Quality versus quantity. I don't really think we know enough about these allegations to say whether they are quality allegations. We just know that there's quantity. There's 20 individuals. So, yeah, I don't think there's any precedent that we can set by this for any means. I mean, Antonio Brown got hit with a suspension for his assault on a delivery truck driver, which was a criminal case. We don't have a criminal case yet, and as far as we're concerned, Antonio Brown didn't get hit with a suspension from his now recently settled sexual assault case. So that's probably the most similar once we get some kind of punishment or discipline rendered on that front. But yeah, I don't think there's really any guide to tell us where we can go with this. I think it's anyone's guess. When you have 20 cases, right? Let's say one case maybe could have resulted in a 1-game suspension or 2-game suspension. If you have 20, right? Does the NFL kind of view this all as one single transaction, or do they view it and multiply it out? In which case, I don't know, the 10+ game suspension is not necessarily off the table. But Zach, we were talking about it offline. I keep hearing the rumors that you're hearing that the trade market is not dead for Deshaun Watson. So obviously there are people inside the NFL that don't think that lengthy of a suspension is coming.
And speaking of the trade market, so hypothetical, let's say he is moved, and then let's say another witness comes forward with a criminal charge. Would the trade be rescinded? Would the team just kind of be stuck with the bad contract and potentially a player that would never suit up with them? How would that work?
So this is the joke I tell on Twitter, Zach, which, I know you're a follower of mine on Twitter. It's almost like the assumption of the risk, right? You trade for a guy who's impending, right? He's probably going to, I don't know if it's probably, but there's a high likelihood that the guy can get hit with criminal charges. And you make a trade under those conditions, you're almost, I think knowingly, right? You're trading for a distressed asset. And what comes of it, you kind of assume that risk. If Deshaun Watson gets suspended for the entire year, hey, you made the trade knowing that risk, and you're obviously getting somewhat of a depreciated price for a guy who's a top 5 NFL quarterback. There was packages on the table, I think, for Russell Wilson, which were 3 first-round picks, if you believe the reports, in order to go to the Chicago Bears once upon a time. I don't know if Watson will command that type of a premium package. I would be very surprised if he did. And then if he does, get some type of lengthy suspension or some type of plea deal in a criminal court, I mean, he's obviously going to be missing time, but you deal with that. You'll deal with the PR hit and you'll deal with the missed games. And yeah, that's the risk that you bear by trading for someone that's dealing with these type of allegations.
So there's no type of comparison. I know a lot of times maybe if you trade for a guy and an injury pops up when they get their physical, you could potentially void it. There's nothing for legal situations like this, criminal or what's the other term? Civil, criminal or civil. You're taking that gamble. There's no way they can be voided.
I mean, just you and I are big sports fans. How many trades in the history that you and I know have been rescinded, right? Like the Chris Paul trade once upon a time. There was a trade with the San Diego Padres, with the Marlins, they didn't reveal some type of injury that was hidden behind the scenes.
The Celtics Cavs a couple of years ago, the Isaiah Thomas, I remember Cleveland wanted more compensation because they found out his hip was worse than they previously said, and they threatened to pull back. Right. Nothing legal wise.
I mean, but as long as everything's out on the table, I don't really have an issue with it. But what I probably would have had an issue with if the Texans had traded Deshaun Watson at a point where they knew about the allegations and no one else knew about them. That's a little fishy, right? That's similar. AJ Preller had these allegations that occurred when he was the San Diego Padres GM early on, where he made a trade. I think the guy was Colin Ray. It was a pitcher. I think it was the Marlins, if I'm remembering. But he didn't disclose something he knew about the pitcher's injury history. And then there was, I believe, some punishment that came down from Major League Baseball. So as long as you're dealing with an open hand, right, and everyone knows what the deal is, and you're obviously dealing with a distressed asset, and it's very clear that you're getting a bargain price or a lesser price, I don't really see anything wrong with it. As long as everyone's on the same page of what's going to happen or what could potentially happen, I don't really see a problem with it.
Is his guaranteed money voidable if he is charged?
Yeah, always if you have conduct detrimental, which is apropos the name of our podcast, you have conduct detrimental to the team or to the league, your salary is potentially voidable. But I think we're a little too premature here. Right now, it's just these civil cases. So, as I try to tell everyone on this, in this case at least, there is no bar to the courthouse steps. Civil case doesn't really mean anything. And Zach, I could sue you for copying my haircut over here. I could sue you for that. I don't know if I collect anything, but I could sue you for it. And just because you're a defendant in a civil lawsuit really means very little. But if the DA's office hits you with criminal charges, a separate entity decides to hit you with criminal charges, and then you're a criminal defendant, that carries a lot more weight. And that usually, as we've seen in NFL history, usually results in a suspension, usually results in some years being voided off your contract, just like we saw in the Michael Vick situation once upon a time. So yeah, that's when the charges get ratcheted up. If and when a DA's office or police department does decide to give that the stamp of approval.
Are you surprised that the Tony Busby kind of came out with a very aggressive approach on social media and kind of blowing everything up, and then kind of went silent? You figured he'd just kind of keep elevating and kind of get the profile larger and make the story bigger. Are you surprised he kind of just really haven't heard from him?
I said earlier, nothing surprises me in this case. So Nothing does not surprise me. Tony Busby came in kind of guns a-blazing. And why a plaintiff's attorney would do that, for the most part, is to draw up a lot of interest in the case and then create a lot of leverage to potentially work a settlement. Because if you have all these eyeballs on the case, you want the case to go away. And, it's going to help a little bit by creating a circus. So in my view, at my 1,000-degree level, one of two things likely happened. Number one, which is what I think what both sides are kind of acknowledging, that they were working on settlement and they agreed to some type of peace treaty, we'll say, as they worked on settlement, which I think is probably what happened. Could it also be a little bit of number two? Number two is who Tony Busby, who was driving this media circus, who was driving the train. It's possible, I don't know, I mean, we haven't heard any reports of it, but that the police department kind of said to him, hey, Tony, we're working in this investigation. You've been kind of outspoken on this case. Maybe take a back seat for a little bit while we work on this investigation. We don't want the public to be influenced by your comments. Why don't you take a back seat and let us just work the case for the next couple of weeks, next couple of months. And Busby, the police can be your best friend in these cases because their investigation can only help your civil case. So, I mean, they're acknowledging it was one. I think it's also possible a little bit of number two, that somebody got in his ear and said, hey, Tony, calm down a little bit. And let's not either A, poison the jury pool, or B, root our investigation.
Are you expecting a settlement anytime soon?
Me personally, no, I am not. I know there are people that are keyed into the NFL world that said a large global settlement was in the works. I just find it, I mean, maybe best intentions, everyone's working on it, but keep in mind, like, this is not a class action lawsuit. Tony Busby doesn't get to decide when all the cases are settled. These are 20 plus different lawsuits with 20 plus different accusers, right? Alleged victims. All have different sensibilities. There might be one, Zach, for example, that, right, like, I'm just, this is complete hypothetical, but it'll make the point. Let's say one is independently wealthy and she's a billionaire, right? And she doesn't need any money and she just wants to make an example out of Deshaun Watson. That could be one plaintiff. But the other side of the spectrum could have someone that's really struggling to make ends meet and is struggling with rent checks. One of those people is really going to want to settle the case and get a payday. The other one is not. The other one's not going to care. So in these cases, you have to figure out who your clients are. And Tony Busby has, I'm sure, 20 different personalities he's dealing with. And not all of them are going to want to settle. Not all of them are going to want to settle for the same price. So sure, would Deshaun Watson like to cut one check and let the victims, the alleged victims, all cut it up and split it 20 ways? Sure. That's not how it works. So as long as one case exists, as long as one case survives settlement, Watson's going to be under fire. And I don't see all 20 cases getting settled. I'd be very surprised if they did. But, again, it's the theme of our episode, Zach. Nothing will surprise me in this case.
Let's say a couple of them get settled, or a couple of them get cleared off. Maybe they say, all right, we don't really have anything for them. Let's say he has a suspension that goes through. Let's say he gets eight games. Let's say the 8 games go through and he still has some of these cases still ongoing. Would he be allowed to play even while these are kind of lingering in the background?
I mean, the short answer is, like, I don't know, it depends what Goodell wants to do. Do you want to have a guy in the field with these allegations looming over his head? I mean, they let Antonio Brown play with his sexual assault case looming in the background, a civil sexual assault case. Sounds a lot similar, except it's it's not 20. So, yeah, is it possible he plays with this hanging over his head? It is, because we just saw Antonio Brown do it. That Antonio Brown case settled. There was no admission of guilt on Brown's part. I don't want to say what's worse than the other. Right, Antonio Brown with his one case, which is the case of alleged rape. I mean, these are forcible touching. It's in the same category of disgusting, the allegations. But could the NFL want Watson to play one of their stars? I wouldn't think so. You're asking me to make a prediction. I don't think they'd let him play with those many allegations pending. I mean, even if he takes the deal and he cuts a check, right? The optics, Zach. I mean, whether it's true or not, if you settle the case, some people in the world are going to view that as being an admission of guilt. I do not. That's not what the legal profession is. Sometimes you cut a check on a cost-benefit analysis, even if you are not guilty and you're not culpable, you might want to settle a case. The public's not going to view it like that. So, yeah, I think the NFL is going to be hard. They're going to be in a really tough position if there are no criminal charges here, and you're going to make some people unhappy one way or the other.
So the Texans selected a quarterback in, I think it was day 2, I think it was round 3, might have been Davis Mills from Stanford. Do you think that's just an insurance policy? Or do you think that means that they really have no idea how this is going?
I think it's a very, it's a telling move. The sports fan in me thinks that's very strange. You finished 4-12 last year. Quarterback was not your biggest problem. And your first pick of the draft, it wasn't around for first or second round pick, because the Texans, as you and I, Zach, both know, they bungled their draft picks and trades over the years. Your first pick
they got David Johnson, so like that box is checked off.
Yeah, David Johnson, he's fantastic. But yeah, I think that is sending a message, so to speak. I don't think Davis Mills is going to be ready to play week 1. I don't think that's the type of quarterback they're investing in. But I don't know. You have a team with, I don't know. We'll make up a number, right? 10 holes to fill. The top 10 on that list is not quarterback. I'd say that's the last hole you need to fill if you have a healthy Deshaun Watson. And mind you, in December, the Texans' policy and their protocol on this is, hey, we're not trading the guy. Too tough luck. We're not trading you. Right? You want to believe all the reports. We're not trading you. And you can be as unhappy as you want. We're not sending you out of town. So they went from that, right? We're not trading you, to drafting a quarterback. So do they expect Watson to hold out? I mean, maybe that's even the more interesting question. Is Watson, if he's not suspended, is he still planning to hold out on top of all this until he demands a trade? Yeah, it's, as they say, you get a certain point, just got to sit back and grab your popcorn.
When we start to get more news about this, either a settlement or anything else, are you expecting like the NFL insiders to be kind of in on this information? Or do you think they're as outside of this box as we are? Do you think it's all the police and the legal department of the Texans, or do you think anybody else is kind of in on this?
Well, Rich Eisen was the guy who had the report last week that said that during the NFL draft, he heard that a global settlement was in the works. And a global settlement is a fancy way to say all of the cases, not five, not six, all of them. So Rich Eisen is an insider. He works, he's going to show in the, I think he was in the NFL Network if he's not still in the NFL Network.
He's everywhere.
He's all over the place. But yeah, that's an insider, and I imagine he was getting his information directly from either the agent or the attorney for Watson, or maybe he has a connection with Busby. That's why one would know about settlement talks. Whether criminal cases are going to be filed, that's a completely different source of knowledge. I don't think the NFL insiders will know anything the police are doing. But yeah, I mean, Watson has an agent who's, I'm sure, very plugged in. The agents are always 1 degree removed from the NFL insiders. So yeah, those guys would be in the know.
Yeah. So that's what the Watson question really have for you. So I want to ask you one question. So you got this course you're teaching in the fall. Are you going to be talking about Watson, or what kind of stuff do you have in mind that you're going to be kind of teaching your students?
This is a great question. The syllabus, it's going to be a cool syllabus. It's still very much in flux. When I took sports law back in the day, we took it as like, we took labor law, and there was like a little basketball cases, baseball. It sounds pretty cool, Zach. Maybe you should go to law school.
I can be like, that's like one class. I can pass the bar with that one class, right?
That's not how it works, but it's fun. If Kim Kardashian can pass the bar up in California, I feel like anybody can pass the bar. So there's 2 ways to probably teach a class. You can teach it as like antitrust, labor law, and then whatever sports cases fall in that realm. I've kind of envisioned doing something similar to this, picking a case study or picking a sport, and then kind of dipping and dodging in there. So, right now we're dealing with Major League Baseball has a $500 billion grievance filed by the Major League Baseball Players Association. I just think that's cool, right? Do I need to get into all the nuances of labor law? I can probably teach it to you through one prism of one case. So I think probably cases are a cooler way to teach the class than subjects. But it's a work in progress. I don't have to decide until June 21st. So I'm working on it up here.
And then one last question for you. So I know all these states are kind of coming out with the name, image, and likeness. Are any of these athletes going to be seeing any money until it's across every state in the country, or when is that going to start?
July 1st.
Really?
July 1st. We're getting close. So 5 states have name, image, and likeness bills that
and Maryland today. I don't know if you saw that.
Maryland passed for July 1st, or Maryland passed in general?
Maryland passed. I don't know a date, but apparently they're in the works.
Oh, Zach, breaking news to me. I did not see that. Yeah. Well, let's pretend that Maryland doesn't exist. I believe there are 5 states that have operative dates of July 1st. I think, if Maryland's July 1st, you had that to be number 6, but there are other states, I think it's between 13 and 15 total, that have name, image, likeness rules that go into effect at some point. But at least when I woke up this morning, 5 went into effect on July 1st. So those are the dates where those states, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and New Mexico, are going to be the only states as of July 1st that can pay their athletes. So that starts, you're not going to get cut a check, but those athletes in those states can go out and be marketers and hawk their own names.
So are you expecting prospects to flock to those states until the other schools in those states, until the other ones kind of get on board?
I think so. I mean, if I had a son or a daughter that was a high-level athlete, we had a record number of people join the transfer portal in college football, college basketball, all across the board. I mean, they're doing it for a reason, right? And obviously, part of it is because they don't have to sit out that 1 year in the middle. The other part of it is that name, image, and likeness is on the horizon. And if you're a state that doesn't have any legislation in the works, it might take 2-3 years to get there without some type of federal bill or the NCAA coming through. I think it is a good as reason of any to enter the transfer portal and see if you can make some money for the last 2 years of your eligibility, something like that.
You said it takes about 2 to 3 years from when they bring it up for it to kind of kick in.
Well, put it this way: we've wanted sports betting in the state of New York for about 5 years, and we still don't.
500 years. 500
years. But
they wanted to bet on jousting. Bill de Blasio said no, that's not happening.
Right. Yeah. But the legislative wheel moves very slowly. So 2 to 3 years. Sometimes, in this current climate, it's taken something like 6 months to a year. But it's not. Some states are just very averse to it. You can imagine, like, a state like Utah, like are they so quick to pay their athletes? I'm not sure. Like compare a state like Utah to a state like California, right? One is much more, we'll say, innovative and at the front of the lines, and then other ones are more conservative, and understandably so. But that's just the way the wheel of justice moves.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's really all the questions I really have for you. How can people follow you on social media and also check out and sign up for your class in the fall?
So I am at Sports Law Lust on Instagram and on Twitter. My podcast is Conduct Detrimental, all sports law topics. And I don't know if my class is open outside of New York Law School, but if you are a
Okay.
law student and you're interested in sports law topics, we're probably going to be posting a lot of fun stuff in my class. So stay tuned.
Awesome, man. Well, it's always a pleasure. Do appreciate it. And congratulations again on an awesome opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Zach. Much appreciated.